Okay.
Are we on?
Magic hours coming. Well, good afternoon everybody, and welcome. At least the weather is a damn sight better than it was if you were at the last lecture, where it was raining so hard at times you couldn't even hear what was being said. But there we go. Welcome to John here, John Treble. He's going to give us a talk on some of the early gliders in the United Kingdom from the 1930s, the VAC, British Aircraft Company, nothing to do with VAC Corporation. And when Jimmy Lowe Wild, who was the proprietor, sadly died at Hanworth, I think that was in '33 in a crash, the company was taken over by a very famous man, Robert Kronfeld. Is that a fair comment? Shall we kick off now?
Yes, certainly. Yes, I'm ready.
Do you want what do you reckon, Dan?
What about?
Lights off, or
Then, can we turn these off?
you're happy? Okay.
Yeah.
Quite loud. The heaters. I think Ray's talking about the turning of the heaters.
Oh, I see.
You.
Careful about
The air conditioning, is it, or something? Heating. Right.
In the workshop.
Yeah. Smells as if someone's been doping something.
Last weekend, during the last week, yes. If all else fails, read the instructions.
Is that all right?
Yeah, it's all fine.
The last time I had a microphone to give a talk through, I couldn't resist the temptation to burst into song after about half an hour or so. But that was one of the handheld ones, you know, like Frank Sinatra. So I burst into song, and students loved me after that.
Considering I programmed those things, I couldn't remember how to
All else fails, turn the power off.
Right, well, my name is John Treble. I have no reputation at all as a historian of airplanes of any sort, but I have been building models since I was 11, which is a very long time ago. And until quite recently, I used to race gliders, model gliders, off slopes, an activity called F3F by the FAI. And I'm afraid that this involves, it's probably worse on your knees than actually running marathons and things, because you have to run up and down hills with lots of grass and stuff like that, you know. So my knees anyway finally gave way, and I had to think of different things to do. And one of the things I thought to do was to build a model of this. This is a that works by itself, I was told. Is that right? Well,
Click on the image itself.
it worked the last time I did it. Oh, it is working. It's doing something. No, that's not, is it? No, that's not it. No. It worked automatically, didn't it, last time?
Click on it. Just click on it.
Yeah.
Now it's
Oh,
going.
there we go. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
This is a rare and wonderful thing. It's not quite as rare and wonderful as that. What do they call? They call something. Anyway, it's a glider that is towed off water, and that man there, whose bottom you can see, was called C.H. Lowe Wild. He was the proprietor of the British Aircraft Company, and this was their Model 8. It had two outings. one in August 1931, of which this is a video, and this video has no sound, and the first one, as you will see shortly, the quality of the photography here is not too good for the launch, but you can see in the distance there the speedboat which is towing it, and there it is in the air suddenly, and the end of the flight you'll see shortly. There we go, and C.H. Low-Wild has an unexpected swim. He does scramble out of it, as you'll see in a second, and he's the plane and him, they're both towed back, I think by the same speedboat that towed them off in the first place. And so that was the maiden flight, which wasn't particularly propitious, but it didn't stop Low-Wild having another go a few months later on the Welsh. That was on the River Medway, by the way, and the later one was on the idea that it was the first water glider in the world is just wrong. There were several before this. I haven't made a complete list. In fact, I doubt if it would be possible to do so. There is supposed to be sound on this.
Sometimes we can have trouble input. Don't worry about that.
No, well, he makes a little speech. You can hear Low-Wild speak. He sounds very little like the Geordie that he is, but he makes a little joke about the speedboat, the fella pilot. Is he called a pilot? Yes, I suppose he is. He says, "Shall I take it up gently, or would you like it to be a bit faster?" And he said, "Oh, take it up gently, otherwise it'll be a submarine instead of a glider." And they all laugh heartily, and off it goes. And as you can see, it flies very nicely. It's got a kind of yoke for the launching, to attach the tow rope at the front. And as you can see, it goes round in a very nice circle, so you can see, I don't know if that's the morning sun or the afternoon sun, glinting on its surfaces. And there it is landing, and it that was it. So that was the second. It actually flew apparently 12 times on that day. So which flight that was, I don't know. But anyway, I thought that was lovely, and the idea of building a model would be even nicer if I could afford to build a full-scale one, of course, but I can't. The idea of building a model of that and towing it off with a quarter-scale speedboat just sort of did something to me, you know. And so I started off thinking about building a model, and I knew nothing about BAC or anything of that sort at that time. But I watched that video many times, and I took measurements of the various aspects of it as it goes round in a circle like that, and you can do that. And I decided that it was that it was elliptical in section, and it was about that wide at the back and about that wide at the front, and all the rest of it. And I designed and built this, which is a quarter-scale model of a BAC-8 tail boom. Now, all I knew about the BAC-8 really, apart from the fact that it had a tail boom shaped like that, was that it had been, it was a variant of the previous model, the BAC-7, and quite a few BAC-7s were built, and I thought perhaps there might be some around to look at, but no such luck, there wasn't. But there was another variant of the BAC-7, which was called the Planet, and that had a little motor bike engine attached on a little tripod thing on the top of its wing, and was really quite a popular plane in the early 30s. In his autobiography, which is a wonderful read, it's called Happy Landings. It's by a man called Edward Mole, who you can see a photograph of in a minute or two. And he describes the. We were looking. My partner and assistant at the back there were looking for this book on our bookshelves for the last week or so, and can't find it anywhere. But so I was hoping to read to you his description of the planet. He said it was the future of fun flying, I think was the phrase that he used. And he said they all seem to have had a barrel of laughter with this thing, and they used to sort of fly wigglies like this and were in circles, 3 of them at a time, and to do all sorts of things that I'm sure were frowned upon in some circles at the time, and certainly would be regarded as thoroughly illegal at the moment. So that's the BAC-8, and that's how I got started. Well, the BAC-7 was a glider, 2-seater glider, and the Planet was an early light sports plane, I suppose. And the Planet was developed further into something called the BAC drone. And I was ferreting around on the internet at one point, and I discovered that there's, in fact, the only surviving BAC drone is right here in the building next door. And I thought, well, if I really want to know what a BAC-8 was built like, perhaps I could look at the drone next door and take some measurements, and because I knew that the wings of these 2 planes, all 3 of them, in fact, the 8, the 7, and the drone, and in fact many more BAC products, all had the same wings, the same tailplane, and the same fin and rudder. It was part of the business model of the company, I suppose. And so I thought I'll take myself off to Lasham, and with a computer and a tape measure and a notebook, and take some measurements and see what it's made of. And so there we are. That's what I did. Well, I got here, and the fellow who was showing me around suddenly said, "Oh, well, if you're really interested in the British Aircraft Company, you'll be interested to know that the archive have just received a bunch of plans from some of which are BAC plans. Would you be interested in looking at those?" So I dropped my measuring tape and my and my notebook and my computer and camera and all the rest of it, and hot-footed over to the archive there, where I was confronted with a pile of, as it turned out, about 300 plans. These were in no order whatsoever. They were covered in dust, and this was just before Christmas. It was just after the first lockdown, I think, and I spent the entire Christmas holiday, I suppose, with some help, of course, from my friend, and we put them in order and had a look at them and saw what we could make of them. Now, it's a very, very curious collection, because it was literally in no order whatsoever. There was a group of about 100 of them, were all printed on different paper, though, so they were quite clearly designed to be separated out, and they were drawn in the same hand, and I'll show you some of those right at the end. But most of them had no indication even of what plane they were supposed to refer to, and not that I could tell anyway. They did, I noticed after a bit, they did have sort of code letters on them, like some of them had a D and some of them had a G and some of them had a DD and a number after, you know. So I thought, well, I'll put those in separate groups and see what they look like. And I still puzzled about some of these plans because it really is a bit of a mysterious thing. Well, anyway, I wound up making some sense of it, and you can.
Press N for next. Yeah.
There we go. No, that's not what we want to see. That's what we want to see. And there they are. All actually, there's more than that, because David Williams at the archive, when I took these back to him and showed him my guide that I'd written, which is a list of them and saying what I think about it. When I took these back to him, he said, "Oh, we got another box of these." So I was sent back home with another 100 of the bloody things. Fortunately, they had been in a box and they were much cleaner than the first lot. I added those to the report, and that's what they looked like in the end. They're all sorted out into batches of various sorts, and I don't know if you can read any of those things. They're mostly just numbers, so you don't have to bother with that. What were these plans? Well, that's a bit of a mystery in itself. I think that what they are, for the most part, are the plans that were mostly what was left over when what was on Low Wild's desk, I suppose, when he died. As Glyn has indicated, he died in 1933. He was in one of these planettes, and it's not clear what happened. I think the coroner decided that he'd actually had an attack of some sort, and the main piece of evidence for this was that he had many times been close to crashing. In fact, there's a video of him actually crashing into a bridge at Goodwood, I think it is, and you've just seen him crashing on that video, the first one. But there he is, and on his desk were these plans, and a couple of years after he died, the Master of Sempill, who was a Scottish aristocrat and a Japanese spy, he appointed, and very influential in the early development of the gliding movement in Britain. He appointed Robert Kronfeld. Robert Kronfeld, of course, is a very famous glider pilot indeed. He was, I think it's true to say, he was the first man ever to do a deliberate flight in a thermal. He used to fly into thunderstorms initially, and purposely, in order to see if there was any lift about. And he was Jewish. He was Austrian and Jewish. And in 1933, in Germany, where he actually lived, well, he mainly lived there because he liked to do competitions and gliding competitions, and this is the way I suppose he made his money. And he used to teach people a lot too. He was a very, very dedicated teacher, and so he was essentially no longer welcome in Germany, and he decided to come to Britain, and he spent a couple of years looking for a job. And finally, the Master of Sempill thought, well, why don't we take over, give him the British Aircraft Company to look after? And so that's what he did, and it eventually became Kronfeld Ltd. And these are the two masterminds behind the rest of it. So when Low Wild died, he had all these things going on his desk, and Kronfeld took them over. And what's in this collection of plans is all of that stuff. Anything to do with gliders has rather strangely been taken out from it. It's all about drones, planettes, and that market for light planes. and an awful lot of them, these drawings are very boring, because drones could be fitted with a wide variety of motors, and if you put a different kind of motor, if the customer wanted a particular kind of motor attached to it, then the design had to be changed in various ways, new engine bearers, a different fuel tank and all the rest of it. So that's what it is. It's what was left over, minus the gliders, plus little bits and pieces of these mostly engine bearers, as I say, and some future projects, which are quite interesting in themselves. So I have written this report about it, which, if you want a copy, you probably can't read that from there, can you? Should have made it bigger, but can I make it bigger easily? No. No, I don't think so. But what I've done in this report was it's a list of the plans transferred to Lasham in 2021, including details of most products of the company, including all gliders. Well, there's actually very little about any of them. There's just one or two sheets that have some parts, they're little drawings of brackets and stuff like that. And there's nothing about the 9, there's nothing about the 8, which is the model that I was chiefly interested in. It's not surprising there was nothing about the 8, because it attracted no orders whatsoever, and as you've just seen, was prone to landing upside down in the midway. And there's nothing about the BAC-1 there. It's a pity, actually, there isn't a BAC-1 there, because that was the first product of the company. It was also the first British-built Proofling sort of clone. Zergling or Proofling, or whatever it was called. It was a primary glider of fairly conventional shape and size and all the rest of it. And part of the business plan of this company was that you didn't design new stuff if you could make do with old stuff, and that's why all these things have the same wings, the same tailplane, and instead of saying, oh look, this is a a Wonder Glider with wheels, and this is just a Wonder Glider, he called the Wonder Glider the BAC-3, and the Wonder Glider with wheels, he called it the BAC-5. So it was all the BAC and a number. The Kronfeld drone, as I say there, started life as the BAC-7, and there you go. But there is among it complete plans. I put complete in inverted commas there, because I'm not sure if it's complete or not. I think there's one sheet missing, but it's kind of hard to tell. There's also quite a large number of these little parts left that don't seem to be described in detail anywhere in it. So there's a gap that it's a sort of plan number 9 shaped gap in the list of things. So I don't really know about that. So I put the complete, but it's certainly possible, as I'll demonstrate to you shortly. You could probably build a BAC-7 full size from these plans. In fact, I suspect that that's what they were for.
One was done.
Sorry?
One was built.
I know, yes, I know. But did he have these plans?
Yeah, the plans are now in the BGC, because I gave them to the BGC, the BAC-7 plans.
Oh, really?
The plans have got Short Brothers stamped on them.
No, that's a different set then.
Another set.
That's a different set. I think they were probably prepared for home builders. They look like it. They've got little notes about, hints about how to make sure that you're drilling your holes in the right places and that sort of stuff. So anyway, yes, well, it's nice to know that somebody knows more about this than I do. Right. So if you want to have a look at this guide in its completeness, then drop me an email. It's j.g.treble@swansea.ac.uk. And I will reply. There are mentions in this of BAC models 1 to 7 and 12. I've found nothing about BAC 11 or 10. There are verbal descriptions of what the BAC 9 was like, and might even be a photograph or two lying around, I don't know. But it looked a bit like a Scud, I think. Right. Is that true? And the BAC 8 you've seen. There's a nice little snippet in Sailplane and Glider in 1931, which has some details of how the BAC 8 was developed from the BAC 7. And essentially what they did was retain the wings and tailplane and cut the tail, the rear part, the fuselage behind the wing off altogether, attached this sort of thing, that way up, like that, so that it could rotate on takeoff and not be stuck in the water. Then the other thing was that they built a hull around the front part. Now, I don't really know if they did actually build a hull around the front part, or if they'd built a whole new front part without the BAC 7 bits inside it. Do you know? No. But anyway, there we go. And then there are these light plane bits, a number of drone variants. There were super drones and drones deluxe and all sorts of different sorts of drones. They had different sorts of motors and.
The one that we've got is the drone deluxe.
Yes.
Most powerful of the engines.
Yes. And there was a Kronfeld monoplane, which rather surprising. Well, actually, I think, and you'll find some remarks about this in the report if you bother to read it. I think there are some of these plans that actually do refer to the Kronfeld monoplane. There are photographs of the Kronfeld monoplane, and it has very noticeable struts. I don't know what sort of the big springs on the front to take some of the landing stresses. So there's that. The ground trainer, which is I'll tell you a lot more about in a second, and a bunch of unrealised projects. And then there's this other set of plans, which I will also show you quite a bit about later. This is the BAC 7, and that is Barbara Cartland, and the woman standing next to it is also called Barbara Cartland, and yes, it is exactly the same person in her youth in 1931. The man sitting in the plane is Edward Mole, who wrote the autobiography that I was talking about a second ago, and the plan was to win the Daily Mail prize for the first flight across the Channel and back again. And so Barbara Cartland put up the money, bought the plane. She couldn't fly, but Edward Mole was very fond of young women, even whether married or not, may I add. And he seems to have agreed to fly it for her, and I like to think of that as, which is clearly pose. She's giving him his flying orders. Did they win £1,000 for flying back and forth over the Channel? What? No, they didn't. Why not? This was apparently the first aero tow ever attempted in Britain. This attempt by these two, and you can see a photograph of what I think must be the tow plane in Kronfeld's book. What's it called? Soaring and Gliding, or his book, his big book, you know, about the way it's done. And it's got a big sort of metal framework fitted at the back of it in order to hold a rather small ring like this. So the tow line was attached to the fuselage somewhere about where it ought to be, somewhere around, you know, so that it's more or less in line with where the CFG should be. and then it was run through this little ring in order to stop it interfering with the tail surfaces at all. And Edward Mole in his autobiography explains that all of this metalwork at the back meant even more metalwork had to be added at the front. And by the time they'd finished, the plane was too heavy to reach a sufficiently high altitude in order to complete the flight across the channel, and would almost certainly have been exactly the same way had it ever got across for the flight back.
John, excuse me, speaking of towing, can you
Sorry?
not shorten the wire anymore, because you're going to start pulling on the thing here.
Sorry. It's
Just drop it to the floor.
I need a little bag with it on. There we are. I'm going to fall over it if I don't hold it in my hand. Is that all right?
Just make sure you don't pull too far.
Okay.
Hold it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's very near my feet, and I like to dance a lot. You know.
Watch out for it.
There we go. There we are. So this is a BAC-7, the plane from which the BAC-8 was varied, and this is this here. Next is a plan of the wing, which is fairly straightforward. It's nothing fancy about it at all. In fact, I think it was part of Low Wild's purpose was to build planes that were easy to repair for the burgeoning clientele that he had among very early glider pilots and members of gliding clubs in Britain. So this wasn't an attempt to be at all fancy or state-of-the-art or anything like that. It was intended to be a practical glider for gliding around in. And somebody somewhere described it as the first two-seat glider in the world. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm sure there's somebody here who knows whether it was or not. But it may have been the first two-seat glider to be built in Britain. There it is. This is the wing section. That's a Göttingen section. Not exactly the way that it was drawn in Göttingen. It's been revised. Exactly how, it's hard to tell. But there's a full set of well, there's some coordinates there, so you could compare them if you had the energy to do so, which I haven't had so far, but I expect I'll get to it eventually. Yeah, it's nice. You could build a wing like that, and it would make a very nice wing to go with my tail boom there. And there's also a fuselage, and I built that tail boom so that it attaches to. Gosh, it's going to be bolted onto this former here, and eventually, and then I haven't decided yet what to do about the rest of the hull there, but the formers at the front are going to have to be modified, and I'll make it look just like that one you saw in the first video.
Upside down.
Sorry?
Upside down.
In the water.
Upside? No. Mine will never be upside down in any water. If I ever finish it. And I'm picking out a couple, two or three of the more interesting things about this, and I'm not going to talk about my own projects at all anymore. I don't think, maybe a little bit, but I thought this was very curious because the first time I came across it was this plan, which is a plan of that plane. But when you look at it carefully, you'll see that there's a wing here. Well, this is all the plan there is. There isn't another sheet or anything like that. There's the wing here, which looks like a normal wing, but this one on the other side is tiny, and it's not got anything at all in the middle. And I thought, well, what on earth could that be? And it turned out, in the end, that it was what's called a ground trainer. It was a very early simulator for training pilots on, and well, what can I say about it? Oh well, there's Kronfeld sitting in one. As you can see, this has symmetric wings, which is a good thing to have on the whole. But the next slide shows the same fuselage with that's actually a BAC-7 wing attached to it. So the BAC philosophy of using your wings on everything that you could possibly make to fly was, and so the idea of the ground trainer was quite interesting, really. What you did was sit in it and start the engine up, and it would become very similar to a drone, I suppose, if you had the BAC-7 wing on it, and it had these stub wings, which were designed to produce some lift, enough to enable the plane to be stabilised on the ground, but not enough to enable it to rise off the ground. And there are all these wires and things, and if you look very carefully, you might be able to see, although I can't. I'll show. No. And there are these wheels. Well, I looked at this, and then I looked at this picture here, and I thought, well, that wheel at the front looks a good deal bigger than the one on the previous slide. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but I squinted at these quite a lot, so I can assure you that wheel is bigger than the one in the other one. And another curious thing is that if you look at the plan, I asked Robin if he could, at the archive, if he could make the pencil jottings on these plans clearer, and I think the answer was probably no, because he'd had enough of it, basically. And there actually are details of bigger wheels on this plan, and a number of other variations as well, which you can see. So this is and I went to the trouble as well of finding Kronfeld's patent, which tells you exactly what it was. The most secret thing about this plane that is described in the patent but doesn't actually appear on the plan, seems to have been deleted from the photographs as well because you can't see it, is that there were rubber. Well, it doesn't say they have to be rubber. They have to be adjustable. Going from the top of this pyramid thing here down to the wheel, that would make the response to the ailerons lesser or greater, depending on how tight you had that element. And the idea was that beginners would start off with them very tight, so that the thing couldn't actually go round it couldn't bank at all. And then you'd gradually release them as they got better. And so the trainee would initially be concentrating on the elevator more than anything else, and the rudder maybe, and the thing could be adjusted so that it would enable a learner to progress in a carefully structured way. I told you that Kronfeld was a keen teacher, and this is evidence of just how keen a teacher he was. He actually designed this thing, and it's very carefully designed to be of use to pupils. So we're going to skip that one. So the next set of plans I've got here are these are all projects. This is called the Air Tourer. It was, I suppose, initially designed by Kronfeld. It's twin-engined. It has, I think it's a single-seater, that one, or maybe it has two. No, it has two seats. It's twin seat, side by side, approximately, not quite in line with each other, and never saw the light of day. This is called the Popular Plane, which has only one motor, and it has two seats, fore and aft. This is called the Aero Car, which doesn't actually seem that much different from the Popular Plane to my eye, but there we are. And this is called, what's that called? That's called the Sky Car, which was three-seater, I think. Yes, there's three seats. There's a pilot at the front and two at the back. I suspect that the two at the back didn't have controls, but I don't know. It's hard to tell from that. Or they don't show the controls in this general arrangement. But they all had these folding wings, just like the drone in the hangar over the way, so that they could be parked easily. And they were future projects. Right. Now, how am I doing? Oh, I've run out of time. 10 minutes?
5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Yep, okay. I mentioned this other mysterious set of, it's about 80 plans. They're printed on cleaner paper than the rest, or drawn. I don't know quite how they were produced, and they turned out to be a complete set of plans for a plane called the Austria 3. Now, the first Austria was enormous. It was 30 meters wingspan. It was the biggest plane, biggest glider ever built, until 2000, when somebody decided they'd have another go at building an enormous thing. And it was the idea was Kronfeld's. It was actually designed and built by a man called Kupper in Darmstadt, and it didn't work very well. But it was enormous, and if you want to see what it was like, there's a half-scale model that a German fellow built and designed. Oh, it must be about 10 years ago now, and that model is now in the museum at Wasserkuppe, and you can see it flying if you put half-scale Elefant, that's spelt the German way, Elefant, glider, if you put that into Google, you'll get about a quarter of an hour of this thing being launched, and it's 15, half scale is 15 meters, so it's a considerable bloody thing even at half scale. What it's like to control it with a radio control system, I do not know. But it was full of new things, like tripartite ailerons, and the ailerons didn't work very well because the wing was the aspect ratio was so high. It was very floppy, and you can see on the model it's flopping like that until it actually gets a little bit of airspeed, and then they come up like that, and it begins to look rather nice. Germans, they called it the elephant because, unlike the model, I read somewhere it was painted grey, and it was big. A big grey must be an elephant, mustn't it? So that's it. And they started off launching it because it was so big, with a big truck and 2 tow ropes, and an aero tow as well. So one of the tow ropes was attached to a truck, and the other to an aero. How they did this, I really don't know. It broke up quite quickly. I think it was less than a year it was actually operational for. He did fly it in a number of places, and there are lots of photographs of it. But it's called it's sometimes called the elephant, but it's what it's got written on the side is Austria. Well, when that finally went to see its maker, Kronfeld had another idea. He'd built a different plane, and that was called Austria 2. And Martin Simons, in his book about sailplanes, has a nice plan for the Austria 2, which I'm not going to be able to find. Here we are. There it is. There. That's what it looked like, roughly speaking. And in fact, it looks pretty much like that. And then it says, up here, it says, further technical details not known. And then he says, Martin Simons writes, the Austria 2 was taken to it went various shows during 1933 and the end of 32, and it was sold. It was called the Fasold when it was sold. It wasn't called the Austria 2, and he said it was still in operation in 1937. Well, another source reveals that it was sold to the Royal Egyptian Gliding Club, which renamed it again. They called it the Ibis 2, and it, according to Martin Simons, it was still in operation in 1937. And this is a general arrangement of drawing of the Austria 3, which Martin Simons says it was similar in all respects, although doubtless there were minor improvements. Well, if you look at the photos of these two things, you can actually see that the noses are slightly differently shaped. One of them has a chine in, and the other doesn't. The Austria 3 doesn't. It's a smooth nose to it, and what the other differences might have been, I don't know. But that diagram looks very similar to that. So that's an Austria 3, and it too was unusual. As you can see, there appear to be two planes drawn here. This one, this is, let me get this right, this is 22 meters wingspan, and this is 14. And the way it was designed was that these parts of each wing were removable, and you could take them apart, separate the aileron from the wing, and pack them into the rest of the wing. And the reason this was an advantage to Kronfeld at the time is that he was going around demonstrating gliding of various sorts, and what he wanted was to have a thermal soarer and an aerobatic machine. And the short wing version was for aerobatics, and also to enable the thing to be towed between these shows that he went to, because it's much easier to, well, I suppose it is, much easier to tow a lower aspect ratio wing than it is to tow something that size. And this we would use for demonstrations of thermal flight, of soaring flight, and so that's the Austria 3. Now, are there any further technical details of that? Well, there are 80 sheets of this. Yes, there are lots of extra technical details. I think you could actually build one from this lot if you had the money and the energy, which I certainly don't. There are the wing sections, the rib sections. There. Oh, I put this in here because of this. This was drawn by a man called Plunkett, who was, or traced it says, who worked at the Kronfeld Ltd in London, and it's dated 1937, which is well within the period when Kronfeld was running the company. And as you will see, that's how to make an Austria 3 wing. That's the rib, and this big space here is the space that was allowed for the main part of the wing, and this here is where they packed the aileron in. Apparently, these were padded so that they didn't damage the surfaces at all. And I think this would make a magnificent project myself, but it's a bit much for me. Anyway, those are the aileron sections. That's the structure of the ailerons. That's the little wingtips that they fitted on to the aerobatic version, and that's the tail plane and the fin and the rudder, and with full details here of the various mechanisms required to make them work. And what else? There. Oh, those are all the little bits that you need to make that. So all of the details here are those. And if it's similar to the Austria 2, you might have a go at building an Austria 2 as well as an Austria 3. Personally, I think I'd be happy with an Austria 3 if I could get around to it. Anyway, there we go. Oh, I thought that was interesting. That's the doorknob. These two planes had a passenger seat. It wasn't equipped with any controls or anything, and I think it was there to enable Kronfeld to take the local bigwigs wherever he was flying for a little ride around. It was apparently very uncomfortable, and it was very hard to see through the little window in the door. But finally, having mentioned Plunkett, I'm going to show you my favourite plan of all, and I've got to find it first. I think this is a part of the. There it is. I think this is part of the monoplane, the Kronfeld monoplane, with the big struts with springs on them to make the landing easier. And this is just a drawing of a little cylinder with a hole through it. It says 1 inch and a 1/4 inch hole. So it's a 1 inch diameter cylinder made of rubber. And someone's written here, this was drawn by Plunkett too, is there? Someone's written, Woolworth's door stopper, 2 for threepence. So no machining required. And that's all I have to say.
Do we have any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Did the Austria 3 fly much over here in this country?
The Austria 3 was flown here, yes. In fact, I have a photograph which I could show you, right here, of I brought all sorts of stuff. I'm not quite sure why I brought all of it. It's another photograph of Barbara Cartland and Edward Mole. But I think it was. I don't think it was built here, but it was certainly brought over here. And I think this photograph was taken in Britain. It's a photograph of Kronfeld's wife, whose name apparently was Margareta. And there she is, sitting in it. You can pass that around.
Sure.
Since you asked the question, I'll pass it that way first.
And it, I don't know when it was finally.
Was that 30-metre span?
No, that was the one with the variable wingspan, 1422, and it was a lot more. I mean, it worked well apparently, and he showed it in a lot of places, towed in between them.
Do you know anything about the glider hanging in the Lake District Museum?
I'm sorry?
The
Do I know anything about it?
yes.
A bit, yes.
I just wondered because
Yeah, it's a version that was made by Slingsby of the what's it called?
Falcon.
The Falcon 3. Yes, the Falcon 3. And it's a very complicated structure. It's quite easy to get plans for it. I don't know if anybody has built a model of one, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't. Well, not the waterplane at least, of the original. But that again, that was built during the war, and the purpose was to train ATC cadets, and I suspect, well, I haven't found any evidence anywhere that any cadets were ever trained on it, but the people who built it and the people in charge of the ATC seemed to think it was wonderful, and they had a couple of good days out with their speedboat and their and their Falcon 3. No, it's something I've had my eye on as well. But there's just
about it in the ATC Gazette in about 1942.
yes, something like that. Yes, that's right.
Some other bits and pieces around on it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Oh, there's quite a lot of little snippets of information, and there's a nice. I've forgotten the names of these people. There's quite a nice description by the. I think he was the. I don't know what the head honcho in the ATC was called, but he has a nice description of his day out when he had lots of flights and seemed to think very highly of the thing. But I don't think it's flown since those first few days. In fact, water gliders generally have not been a big success.
There is an actual fact of video of that very glider flying from a lake around about 43.
Yeah.
The fuselage of that glider still exists.
The whole thing still
It's
exists.
at the Windermere
it's in the museum.
Museum.
It's still there. The whole thing is there. Wings and all.
No, the wings they've got are not the original. They're those
Oh, are they not?
of a
Oh.
tutor.
Right.
But I did inquire of the Windermere Museum, did they really want to keep it? And I got a rather rude reply. Yes, they did.
How did they keep
Yes,
the wings level initially on the takeoff?
Sorry?
How do they keep the wings level on the initial part of the takeoff?
With difficulty.
They might have had floats. There is, as I say,
Well,
there is a video available of one of the flights. Successful.
But it flew a number of times on a couple of days. But as I say, I don't. I've not come across any records of any ATC cadets being trained with it. Although it seemed like a jolly good idea to me. I mean, I would have gone.
Big wing floats on it. Big wing floats on it. Because the boat
Yes, I think it did. Yes, that's the answer to your question. It had sponsons under the wings. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So,
All right.
any
so
more?
we've
For any
got-
more?
Yeah. The final lecture of the winter series is in exactly a month's time, Sunday the 16th of March. And it's Andrew, Andrew Jarvis, the chairman of the
Yes, the
Vintage
president.
Glider Club. Sorry, the president. I do apologise. The chairman, the chair lady is just over there. But no, Andrew is going to be giving a lecture. I think it's basically very famous chap called Test Pilot, did a lot of gliding as well in his spare time. Harold Penrose, you know that name? Yeah.
Heavy mill.
So there is going to be, that's what the talk is going to be in 1 month's time. And then of course we're going to have wonderful weather, so we haven't got any time for watching lectures. It's going to be live. Fun, Right, super. Okay, thanks very much indeed, John.
Thank you. Thanks for putting up with me.